Hi, and welcome to the 69th TiddlyWiki Hangout. I'm Jeremy Ruston, the inventor of TiddlyWiki, and I'm joined today from left to right on my screen by Yaka. Yaka, would you like to say hi, where you're from, introduce yourself, and say something about your work with TiddlyWiki?
Hello, I'm Yaka, hailing from France. As you can hear, I have a terrible cold, and I'm using TiddlyWiki both for personal note-taking and experiments, and also in a production capacity, mainly as a way to share documentation and tools, and tentatively as a groupware and a knowledge-sharing platform, as the platform allows. And that's it for me.
Brilliant, thank you, Yaka. Branimir, would you like to say hi, where you're from, and say something about your use of TiddlyWiki?
Sure. Hi, my name is Branimir. I'm from Sofia, Bulgaria. Mainly a user of TiddlyWiki. I'm using it as a documentation system in my IT development team, and also for some of my personal needs.
Indeed, great to have you here, Branimir. Glad you could join us. Eric, would you like to say hi?
Oh, hi. I was on the end of the list on my screen, so I wasn't expecting to go yet. But hi, I'm Eric Schulman. I'm the author of Tiddly Tools, the lead developer on TiddlyWiki Classic, and soon to be the author of Inside TiddlyWiki. And I'm located in Silicon Valley.
Brilliant. Glad you could join us, Eric. Thank you. And I think we've got a new visitor today, Jeff. Would you like to say hi? I don't think you've been on any of the earlier Hangouts. Forgive me if I've forgotten, and you have.
No, I haven't. I'm just kind of lurking for it at this point. I been using TiddlyWiki for a few years. I stopped using it once Evernote came out, and dissatisfied with Evernote, so I'm starting to come back.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's the war with Evernote is of eternal interest. Jeff, thank you. Glad you could join us. Mario, would you like to say hello, where you're from, and say something about your work with TiddlyWiki?
Yeah, hi. My name is Mario Beach from Austria, near Salzburg. Contributor to TiddlyWiki Classic for plugins and themes. And yeah, at the moment making the German translation for TiddlyWiki 5 and contributing to the list a little bit.
Indeed, a very important contributor. Great, glad you could join us, Mario. And finally, Nathan, would you like to say hi?
Hi, I'm Nathan Kane. I'm a developer from the United States, and been using TiddlyWiki and helping my girlfriend with developing some sites with TiddlyWiki.
Indeed, great to have you here with us, Nathan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Today I've got a little list of topics to discuss, and there's a couple of questions in the Q&A panel. Do feel free to add more questions as we go along, and we'll pick those up. The first thing I thought we should talk about today, though, is Eric's Indie-Gogo campaign. So over the last week, Eric posted to the TiddlyWiki group the Indiegogo campaign page for him to write Inside Tiddlywiki-the-missing-manual, which I think it's fair to say is conceived as the first volume of an extensive ultimate manual to TiddlyWiki. And it goes without saying that I support Eric in running this campaign, and have been helping him and will continue to do all that I can to help and support the campaign. I think Eric has proven that he can write about TiddlyWiki with great clarity, and that he's very good at anticipating what people want to be able to do with it. And so my prediction, a very safe prediction, is that if Eric raises the money and is able to write the book, that it's going to be absolutely storming, and I think exactly what the TiddlyWiki beginners need. What Eric's campaign, the first campaign, is specifically to cover the first volume of the book that's for beginners to TiddlyWiki. And it's that group, of course, that from my perspective, I've been painfully aware that tiddlywiki.com doesn't serve their needs very well. I think a linear book, that you can just work your way through chapter by chapter, will be a very provide a very welcome learning style for a lot of people. So I look forward to great success. Eric, that was just me introducing it, but
yeah, that was the no pressure lead in there. It's going to be a blockbuster success. You know, 1 million copies sold overnight. Yes, as Jeremy has noted, in the last week, I have, after quite a bit of work on the idea and the planning for how this book project would best be done, I've officially launched a 60-day fundraising campaign. So by January 15th, that's when the fundraising portion ends.
Jeremy, sorry, could you screen share so you can point to the...
Oh, this is very good.
Actually, I can just drop the link is what I should really just do. So if I just... Actually, I guess I could screen share too, but let me just get the link for you first. Doing that, and then you click over there, and then you come back over here, and I paste it in there, and there's the link. And now I suppose I could just go there and then attempt to screen share.
If not, I've got it open in a browser window. I can share.
All right, let me just see if my screen sharing, which is the screen share button, that one with the arrow on it that says screen share. Oh, well. All right, and then it looks like I can share that window. And okay, so you should be now seeing my screen share. All right, so this is an Indiegogo campaign, so the format for this page is pretty much the same all along. You know, everyone gets the same basic layout. So a quick little graphic just to sort of illustrate the idea that we're looking at what's inside TiddlyWiki. We can recognize that as the Motivon Jack kitten silhouette from TiddlyWiki. And so we just add a couple keys. But the basic idea here is to create a series of guidebooks with examples and tutorials, things that can actually step you through the how-to of things. And as noted here, this is sort of an introduction for folks who may not be fully, you know, well, what's TiddlyWiki? Well, it's an open source system, etc., but it's has a lot of learning, and so I'm going to write a book. And then, of course, you're supposed to talk a bit about yourself. So who am I? You know, what have I done? As I noted in the intro, I'm the lead developer of TiddlyWiki Classic, at least now, originally, of course, Jeremy, and that I've created Tiddly Tools, that I've been the administrator of the Google groups, and that I'm a software design consultant. Now, the writing itself, as Jeremy noted, it will be broken up into a series of separate book efforts. The first one will be for a user's guide, which will be an introduction for people just starting out with TiddlyWiki. As Jeremy has noted, there's a kind of a bit of a curb, if you will, that you have to stumble over just to get started. Is what is a tiddler, how the whole philosophy of breaking things into parts and then bringing them together, the basic mechanisms of the sidebar and the main story river and the menus and the icons and what are they. This is the sort of stuff that there isn't really a good introductory walk you through it kind of book at the moment. So the first book is going to be a user's guide, and as I say here, in the initial funding goal, let me scroll this down a bit here. The initial funding goal is to create the user's guide, and the topics in there are things like what is TiddlyWiki, what is it good for. There'll be a little bit of a background history in that section about, you know, how TiddlyWiki has evolved from classic.
Eric, so sorry. I'm going to make a suggestion, which is actually I think people should be reading the page.
Well, clearly, but
if they go there to make a donation, perhaps it would make sense to take questions from other people. In the Hangout, just because there may be things that still aren't clear to people.
Indeed. Well, please read this. As Jerry says, read the proposal. I sort of lay everything out here. The main thing is that it will be divided up into separate books that have different focus, and that after the user's guide, there'll be more focus on things like an authoring guide and a developer's guide, which have more technical details to them. So that this first effort will be directed towards getting people started with TiddlyWiki.
Yeah. So people on the call, I think there's several topics here. There's just making sure that everybody understands what Eric is proposing, and whether that, and I guess we're interested in whether that meets your needs, because obviously in order for this to be a success, we need all the TiddlyWiki enthusiasts in the world to back the campaign. And if Eric really is going to do the job that he says he is, then I think it'll be extremely inexpensive for us all. So, guys, any questions for Eric about the Indiegogo campaign, about what the perks are that you get when you donate to the campaign, or any other questions for him?
I have a question. So the campaign is for giving you the time that you can write the book, but the book itself will be free. So did I understand this right? So
well, yes and no, I suppose. The intention is to initially publish it in the low-cost free, by putting it out as a TiddlyWiki-based website.
Okay.
But then converting it to ebook or a PDF format, or a phone format as an encapsulated document, and then those might be something where, like as an ebook or as a phone app, you might be downloading it either for free or for a nominal charge.
Okay.
From the, whatever your source is for that, and then the printed book will be done as a print-on-demand service, so that there won't be any big overhead for having to print 500 copies and have a big box of them in my. So by doing it print-on-demand, I suppose that people who want a printed copy will just go to that site and click on the option for it, and whatever they charge for their printing, that would be what people would pay for it. And of course, I suppose there's some nominal, profit sharing between the author and the company that does the printing. But I could just make it, cost of printing and nothing more. So there might be some distribution means which have a fee and some which don't. The content itself is intended to be, free. Yes, okay. Just like TiddlyWiki. So the purpose of the fundraiser is to give me the time to do the writing and not to actually sort of make me money by selling a book. Okay.
We had, it's fair to say, lots of discussion about this, and you'll notice that one of the perks at $500 is you get a printed copy of the book that has been autographed. But for the lower perks, like the $250 perk, you don't get a printed copy. So the rationale there is that the thing that's valuable that Eric is providing as a perk is the signed copy of the book. And so, clearly, the motivation for getting that is in order to support Eric. It's a visible way to sponsor him and to give you something hopefully quite nice in return. But I think in order for, the reason why the material has to be given away for free as well is because we want to be able to take advantage of the ability of the feedback loops on the internet to improve it. So by making it available to as many people as possible, Eric will be able to improve it, I think, much better and more quickly than if it was, a private thing that only the sponsors or people that paid for got access to.
Touching on the perks and the different kinds of perks here, the intention of perks is to encourage people to contribute, but clearly if the reason they're contributing is because the project itself is something desirable, then the perks don't really make that much of a compelling difference in terms of getting people to put up funds. But essentially I have and so the goal is to have perks which don't cost a lot to provide, because the idea is to get as much of the funding to the purpose of the project and keep down the cost of funding, as it were, by not having expensive rewards. So what I did was, the first reward is the simplest one. Is for anybody who contributes $10 or more, is they get to read early draft copies that I'll be posting and give me feedback, which of course is a great advantage to the writing process itself. But it also says, hey, if you've put anything into this project, if you have any interest at all in this project, you get to see what's going on ahead of time and give feedback. So that's the first perk, is participation.
Well, let's not list them again. We'll take questions.
There is a question from Nathan in the sidebar.
Wait. Oh no, he actually took back his comment a bit. He says he's probably enough there.
Well, one of the things that we didn't manage to do that certainly on Kickstarter they recommend is a video, and Eric and I discussed the possibility of just a 30-second video of Eric introducing himself and explaining the purpose of the project, which is something that would be quite good if we could do.
We can still do that. The reason that it isn't there now is that was one of the points that I was getting hung up on. Right. In a very odd way, I'm a bit camera shy, and so I found myself saying, I need to launch this fundraiser, but do I delay launching in order to get past this whole camera thing? And so we can still do that, but I didn't want to wait any longer in terms of trying to get that done before putting this out there. Just getting back to the perks one, I don't want to list them all, but essentially the 4 types are: participation is number 1. Number 2 is recognition. You get a thank you. At different levels of contribution, there's a different, you're called a different thank you. Number 3 is, since I am an independent consultant, I can offer some of my time as a reward, so that I'm offering some credit towards hours of TiddlyWiki consulting as a reward. And the 4th one, as Jeremy noted, is for the highest contributors, is the printed book autographed. And of course, those people won't pay for the book; they'll just get a copy. So, but those are the 4 basic levels. And anyone who wants to put in more than that, I'm very open to suggestions for what they think would be a suitable reward for their contribution. So give generously and give often. And I'd encourage you,
if you are minded to donate to Eric's campaign, it's also can be incredibly helpful if you can maybe write to the group explaining why you took that decision, because I think in order for a campaign like this to work, we need to make sure that there's a lot of discussion about it, so that it's very much brought to people's attention. And I think that for all of us to reiterate why this is a good deal is really valuable. It helps to underline the value in what Eric is doing and why Eric is the right person to do it, I think. Any other questions for Eric on the Indiegogo campaign?
Yeah, I have one. I was wondering why you picked this model of running a crowdfunding campaign as opposed to, say, maybe going for a straight-up subscription model, because your entire program reminds me very much of writing through subscription, which used to be a very common format for, say, fanzines or community-sourced content in the olden times of D3 publishing. And it's always very complicated and interesting to see how people go about funding projects that run around open source software, because all relationships to money are a bit tricky with that sort of project. On the one hand, it's a sort of common good resource that you're creating, and obviously you need to be able to afford the time and attention to do it. So certainly you cannot, or at least not everybody can afford to do that of their own free time, and it needs to be somehow compensated in some cases. So I was wondering what was the thinking behind going for a one-shot fundraising as opposed to maybe setting up an ongoing process where people will chip in and you will tailor your time accordingly. If you can expand a bit on that.
Okay. When I started seriously putting together the crowdfunding proposal, the first question is which crowdfunding service to use, and you really should choose one because you don't want to divide your crowd audience among different services. It doesn't work out. So the initial look was a sort of across the board at what are the main popular crowdfunding sites, and Kickstarter is obviously the big kid on the block at the moment, and Indiegogo is a pretty good second, they're following along pretty closely. So both of those sites were in my view. There are other sites which are more subscription based, like Patreon and things like that. Each site has its own strategy for funding. Kickstarter does the all or nothing campaign. That's their big push. That's their reason. Indiegogo provides different kinds of funding campaigns, and in this particular case, the flexible funding campaign seemed more practical in the short term because of the way the funds are processed. Of course, they also have percentages, in terms of what percentage they'll take from the thing. So those are some of the factors. As far as a subscription service like a Patreon or I don't know some of the other ones, my thought was that to get this launched, that it was better to do it as a single project that could be done from start to finish and reach success, and that once the initial book effort had been completed, that additional fundraising campaigns could be launched with a demonstrable track record from the first book, and that could be perhaps done more as a subscription, because the overall plan here is to write this first book in several months, and then there are obviously more books. There's the user guide, the author guide, the developer guide, the migration thing. All of these things will take time, and so that once the first book is done and we know that this will work, that I can write a whole book, that it can be distributed effectively, and that people find it useful and valuable, then it will be a lot easier to put together some form of open-ended subscription-based funding to have me continue to do this, having demonstrated the initial success. So it was partly a matter of just picking from a handful of main fundraising sites, and partly just sort of wanted to keep this as a more or less an experiment to see how well this is going to go. But that my desire would be to be able to write for the next year or more. The initial plan is for just a few months, but I can envision over a year's worth of writing to be done.
Yeah, that seems a very solid reason. Following up on that, the obvious question: why go for a book at all and not a big TiddlyWiki?
Well, in essence, the way that I've planned this, it will be a big TiddlyWiki. That the initial book I'm going to use TiddlyWiki as my writing tool because I am very adept at it, and that to a certain extent, of course, there's a little bit of the what do they call it, eating your own dog food effect. So by creating it as a big TiddlyWiki, it will hopefully make it even more accessible to people to understand what's happening. But there are always people who like an offline copy, a tangible something, bedtime reading, and the ability to deliver it as a book, I think, makes a lot of sense as well. Because if you just do it as an online site, then what if the person can't figure out how to get TiddlyWiki to work on their platform for some reason? Well, there's a book, and the book can explain it. They don't have to worry about sort of getting past the first electronic hurdle just to learn how to use it.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Any other questions for Eric on the Indiegogo campaign? I noticed that there are already 4 funders, and we're running.
Sorry, I have one.
Go on.
Yeah. How do you imagine updating the book? Because TiddlyWiki 5 has now just become stable, and there are many more features I believe are going to be added even in the next few months. So what to say about the next year? And I assume that many of these features will be targeted to the user interface, functionality in terms of how easier it becomes for users, for new users, and things which are mostly generic. I see it like this. Of course, Jeremy, you could tell more about the the directions that you intend to develop TiddlyWiki ahead. But if that's just one book that is going to be finished, I see that it's on a product that is going to be in ongoing work, and it's going to be developed in time and in the recent future, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a very good point there that the kind of things that will be addressed in the initial book, the sort of introductory user's guide, things like the interface, while it has stabilized quite a bit, there's still quite a bit of new stuff. Jeremy just put out new icons so that if I have diagrams and snapshots in this, it would have to change because otherwise people would be looking at the book and say that's not what I see on my screen. By putting it out as a TiddlyWiki posted online, obviously it has a bit of flexibility in terms of being updated incrementally. And even as a printed book, that while I would probably not submit updates to the print service as often, we could have incremental updates there because it is print on demand. So you could say, well, everyone who gets the printed book is getting the latest version of it, whatever that happens to be. And maybe we can have point releases on the print book. Usually you think of a print book as very static and unchanging, but with print on demand, every copy can be the latest revision of the content. So that I don't see that as locking it into long-term static presentation. Obviously, there will be then ongoing work to keep it up to date, which would need to be funded as well as part of maybe the subscription model that we're talking about beyond this first push, would be to include some of that for doing revisions to existing content. But I expect that for the first book at least, most of the information will be about concepts, and I don't see those as being radically shifting over the next months or the next year or so. So I don't see that there'll be a lot of residual changes needed for or remedial changes. I mean, for the initial book. The other books will probably have more technical basis to them. They'll be about authoring techniques and how to use widgets and transclusion. So in that case, where syntax is shifting, there may be more of a change in content needed. But that's beyond the scope of what I've planned for the first book. And the problems with keeping additional stuff up to date will be something that we can work out a strategy for. But as I said, I think that by publishing it mostly online and in digital format and then the print on demand, none of those forms locks in the content irrevocably. So future changes could be done.
I would add that, well, underlining really what Eric said, that the introduction, the difficulty with the introductory book is there's going to be screenshots, and those screenshots are quite likely to need updating because we will, I guess, continue to tweak the layout, tweak the icons, that kind of thing. But most of the changes that we make to the core will be carefully backwards compatible, so it'll be additional ways of doing things. The action widgets are a great example where you've always been able to trigger actions directly on the button widget, and then we added the action widgets without removing that capability. So if you were reading a guide which preceded the introduction of the action widgets, that guide would still be accurate. It's just it would be missing the opportunity to tell you about something additional that had been added. So I think the existence of Eric's book, just like the existence of plugins, is one of the things that will gradually keep the constraint that we benefit enormously when we can change TiddlyWiki without introducing a backwards incompatible change. Does that answer your question, Branimir?
Yeah, I expected something like this.
Indeed, you know how online-oriented Eric is, and this is clearly Eric's life's work. So I don't suppose it's going to stop any more than it's going to stop for me.
Well, the main issue is I'm going to write this whether or not I can afford to. The key is that if I can't afford to, I won't be doing so well, and so it will be taking a lot longer to write. So that's the main thing here, is that there's been this call for a book for a very long time, and there's been attempts to create centralized sort of group-authored bits and pieces, but what it really needs, honestly, is a single person with a directed focus, without distraction, and as Jeremy so kindly said, I do seem to have a bit of an ability to explain this stuff with some clarity, and so I think that's where I need to just sort of step up and fill the need and make this book happen.
Indeed, with help from all of us supporting the campaign, and I hope that.
Let's not minimize the support of the participation in the book. Just as with TiddlyWiki itself, the power of TiddlyWiki has evolved due to the feedback loop with the community. The effectiveness of this book will be based in part upon how well people communicate what it is they need and want in the book, because that's what I will be writing to, is what the community tells me they need.
Yeah.
For example, just for showing, one of the things I keep seeing people say about this book is that, is there going to be something to tell me how to convert from TiddlyWiki Classic? And in my plan, I had envisioned this migration guide as a separate book down the road, because the priority, I think, is to get new people on board with TiddlyWiki 5, and so having the introductory book first makes a lot of sense. But now I'm thinking perhaps that in some way there's a need to sort of give a little bit of that migration from Classic to 5 earlier in the plan, because that's what I'm hearing from people, is that this is what we really need to know. But I don't know where to fit that in exactly, so that it really depends upon how much the community says that that's what's the highest priority.
Indeed. Well, I was going to say earlier, Eric's got 5 funders so far. 4 funders who've pledged $680. So that's over the first 24 hours. If the remaining 60 days we get another $680, then you'll have made $40,000, Eric, if we keep up this phenomenal rate of the last 24 hours.
Well, let's be realistic for a moment here. There's going to be people who immediately say, oh yes, wonderful idea, let me open my wallet and put in money. And then there's going to be people who say, interesting idea, I think so. And then so I expect that the first week or so we should see a nice rate, and then perhaps a dip. And then towards the end, I hope that we'll have it rise again as people start seeing that this project is definitely, meeting its funding goal, and so they're going to push it over the top.
Let's hope, indeed. Thank you very much, Eric, and so best of luck from me, and I'm sure everybody else, with the campaign. I was going to move on to a look at the questions in the Q&A panel, and then I've got a couple of bits of show and tell where I'd like to show you some new stuff and get some feedback. And then there's a couple of topics that we jotted down for a general discussion as well. Yaka's just asking to make to say something else about Eric's campaign. Yaka, go ahead.
Yeah, just two little things. One, going back to the notion of future-proofing the book with future revisions and editions. May I suggest, if that goes well with your envisioned layout, that you consider putting maybe QR codes in the headers of chapters or so on. From experience, reading technical manuals that include URLs and following them by hand is a pain in the neck. So, especially in view of people using more and more mobile phones and tablets alongside their reading in the train or in planes, QR codes could be very, very handy indeed to have a link to maybe future revisions of a given chapter. That's one thing. And the second one was about the campaign itself on Indiegogo. Maybe you could want to add a link to some place, maybe just on the Google Groups or somewhere else, in the campaign page to maybe help gather feedback from prospective patrons and readers as to what they deem most important to see in the first book. And that's it.
Well, part of the campaign will actually be the inside TiddlyWiki discussion group, but the intention there is that that would be for people who have already decided to do some funding. They get invited to that group. But you're right. I should point back to the overall general TiddlyWiki group, and we can have a sort of open discussion there as to what's needed. So.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you, Yaka. I'm going to start picking up the two questions that are in the Q&A tab, which are both from Branimir, in fact. So thank you for that, Branimir. The first question is, why is the spacing of the tiddler icons, tiddler toolbar icons, different in edit mode and view mode? And I believe that it's just CSS, Branimir. So I think it's by way of being a bug, and it's something that we might want to look at fixing. I believe, as I recall it, the two toolbars use slightly different techniques for sizing the toolbar icons to be the same size, and that has the effect of changing the size of the white space that is used to separate the icons.
I was particularly looking at the trash icon, which looks a little bit closer than the others. I mean, I think it goes a little bit to the right.
Yes, it's one of the things that there was also a bug that I've just fixed for 5.15, where there was a line break, well, inconsistent line breaks after the toolbar buttons in the edit template, and that was giving peculiar spacing either side of the cancel icon. So the basic issue, which is I think the font size applied to the white space between the icons, is caused by CSS and could be fixed.
Yeah, sorry, it's more interesting how I came to that observation. Is that I was often clicking on the trash icon rather than the cancel icon, and I was thinking if it can be moved a little bit to the left, and then I noticed that it's just actually a bit to the right, and that's the reason. Maybe in a hurry I was just clicking it.
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
Because the deleting action is actually more rarely done rather than the cancel and the save action. So I was thinking, but that's a GUI issue.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So as to say, if you think it needs to be fixed, do might be worth creating a ticket for it. And if you can explore what you think is the best solution, even better. So moving on, Branimir is asking what highlighting language is used for text plain tiddlers. Can it be customized? So this question relates to if you've got the highlight plugin installed, then optionally code blocks can have a language associated with them, and then the highlight plugin will highlight the text in that language. And so it's not language in the TiddlyWiki sense, it's language in the C++ bash sense, if you see what I mean.
It's in highlight.js, I think there are languages. And yeah, you can specify your after the 3 backticks, but I'm referring mostly to the...
I know what you're saying. You're saying when we display a plain text tiddler, can we...
Yeah, the one that when you rather import a file directly into TiddlyWiki, a text file.
So at the moment, there is no language assigned to those text boxes, and sorry, to those code blocks. But there could be. It's not so clear. There's problems, because probably what you would want to do is to have that highlighting language specified in a field of the tiddler. The problem with that is that at the time that we parse a resource for transclusion, we have the text and the type, and we don't have access to the other fields of the tiddler. And the reason for that is because well, it's complicated, but we don't. So probably the best we could do at the moment would be to have a global setting that was applied to all text, plain text tiddlers.
Yeah, if it's a global setting, then it will be assigned to all new text plain tiddlers. But also, if there could be
well, not just new ones, all of them, all text plain tiddlers.
But what if additionally there could be a field so that you can overwrite?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that there's a function inside TiddlyWiki that takes a type, as in text stroke VND TiddlyWiki, and a string of text, and it converts it into a transcludable parse template. That function doesn't have access to the tiddler, it just has access to the text and the type. The reason why it doesn't have access to the tiddler is because there isn't necessarily a tiddler. Sometimes we call the parser on text that wasn't extracted directly from a tiddler. For instance, a typed block means that the text of that typed block is passed to the parser. So do you see, that's a structural problem that because some plain text tiddlers correspond to an actual tiddler that you could go and look at a field of, you might be tempted to think that you could always do that, but as I say, it's not a general solution, because this mechanism needs to work for parsing text that didn't come from a tiddler. So I guess it might be more interesting to ask you why you want to be able to do this, what problem you're trying to solve.
Well, as I have mentioned on previous Hangouts, I am writing documentation, and it includes a lot of configuration files. Some of them are script files, so I have SQL files with some are with simple selects, and others are Oracle PLSQL code, which highlight.js actually highlights pretty nice. Some are Bash or Core shell scripts, and yeah, that's mostly it. And I add them by just drag and dropping them, and they are added with the text plain type. But here comes another idea that I just occurred to me. What if you could define not text plain, but text shell or text SQL or text another type of tiddler, and on this type you assign the language that is using in the highlight.js plugin. So during the import or later, you can just decide not to have it as text plain, but another text type.
I think that's the correct solution. I do have a correction to what I said before, which is that actually the code block that is generated by the text parser is given as a language, is given the content type. So in other words, that's why the code block for instance, highlights JavaScript, because the code block that's generated when you view a JavaScript tiddler includes the language setting, language equals application JavaScript.
Yeah, I noticed some type of highlighting, which most of the times was correct, but sometimes it was quite wrong. And it's because I have seen that the Highlight.js plugin has something like auto-recognizing languages.
Yeah, well, that's
That's
another option, is that we could, instead of using the type, we could get it to auto detect. But I think really, if you want to do that, it's better to do so via a transclusion that specifies the language as detect. I can't remember what the setting is. Anyway, it's interesting. There's always a lot of questions about Highlight.js. There's always a lot of questions about Code Mirror. I find it a bit frustrating in a way because they're external libraries, and they don't necessarily do exactly what would be the most useful thing for TiddlyWiki, understandably.
Jeremy, there is also one point, because the highlighting, or let's say general the type, the MIME type, is important. For example, also if you send a tiddler to the server. So, for example, SVG image, if you load it from the server, then it should be displayed as an image. But sometimes in edit mode, or also in a development TiddlyWiki, I want to send it to the server as SVG, and the server should return it as an SVG. Also, the transclusion should create a picture. But when I open the tiddler, I want to see the plain text, because I want to see, let's say, the content, not the picture. And in this case, so this is always the problem. I was also facing it with a Code Mirror plugin on TiddlySpace, so that's why I had two content types. One which is sent to the server so that it can handle the tiddler in the right way, and the second one is just for display, and it can be different. So I think Branimir has the same problem, because the TiddlyWiki can handle the text block in the right way. It needs to be text plain or something like this, but the highlighting should be completely different.
But I think that the issue here is that it is in the question that Branimir has tiddlers that are text plain, and he wants them to be highlighted. There is no highlighting defined for text plain, so the solution is to set the type of the tiddler to the correct type for the highlighting to take place, because in order for the highlighting to take place, we need to know what language it's written in.
Yes, if I could specify just the type of the file, and the type meaning the language, for example, C++ or SQL.
You could have a look at the MIME type. So Wikipedia has an overview about all the possible MIME types, and there will be several which have text something, and the fallback mechanism then looks, if you don't know the highlighting, then it uses text, and text is just no highlighting. And if it knows about the second part of the MIME type, then it can be used for highlighting. So you should have a look at Wikipedia and have a look at the different MIME types. Probably there are some for your languages.
Okay.
Okay. So what I was going to say now then was just a tiny bit of showing and telling. So on last week's Hangout, Mario asked me when 5.15 was going to be released, and I said that I thought it should be released in the next week. The reason why it hasn't been is because the export button, which is one of the last things, most recent things, big things that's been added to 5.15, really needs to have nested pop-ups. So I can show you what that problem is on tiddlywiki.com. So tiddlywiki.com pre-release, and oh, my internet seems to be being a bit slow. Let me try it again. That's bad. It's a bit weird that my internet's being bad for browsing to a website. Is TiddlyWiki.com working for other people? Not that GitHub Pages is down or something, is it?
No, for me it's working.
That's very strange. Okay, well, I mean, I was going to show you an earlier pre-release, but the issue is that when you click export, sorry, when you refresh. Right, I would like that export button to work. It doesn't because at the moment there's no support for nested pop-ups. So if I have the export button in the toolbar itself, then I get the expected pop-up that allows me to choose the type of export. So the fix that I want to do before 5.15 is released is to add support for nested pop-ups so that there would be, if I click export off again, so that here the export menu item would have a little arrow here to the right. When I choose this menu item, the submenu would open, and having opened it, I would be able to click back onto this menu and the expected thing would happen. So this change is actually a quite a big change to the semantics of the way that pop-ups work. And right now, I've got a whole load of commits backed up because it's broken. So a specific issue is if I click that, the down arrow to bring up the drop down, if I click it again, the drop down should disappear, and it's not doing so at the moment. And at the moment, the nested pop-ups aren't working. They actually have been working. It's just literally the code that you're seeing today, or seeing now, doesn't do it. So it's a bit annoying, but I think fixing that will also mean that you'll be able to change language theme and story view on the more drop down, which is quite handy. And you've got the same issue here with export tiddler on the tiddler toolbar menu as well. And whilst I've been showing you all of this, I guess it demonstrates the new icons, which have been very controversial. But actually, before I move on, does that make sense about the nested pop-ups? Yes, surely.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue with the icons was that they had, and again, if I can go to tiddlywiki.com, it'd be nice if I could demonstrate the old icons. Okay, it's working now. So I'd been just mildly frustrated in the background at some of the inconsistencies in the icons. So that tick is a lot thicker than that down arrow. That down arrow is narrower than that one. The thickness of the various circles and boxes all vary widely. Some things have rounded corners like this plus and the hamburger icon. Some things do not have rounded corners, such as this cog. And it was something I wasn't actually going to do anything about because I don't really think that I should be spending too much time doing icon design. Except that Matt raised a very good point, which is that as soon as we brought in the export icon, the save icon really starts to get quite confusing because they closely resemble one another. So he prompted me to explore alternatives for the save icon. And in fact, I think Matt's suggestion was a tick. He suggested mirroring the tick that we get for clicking done on a tiddler. So I went through loads of different iterations, have settled on this guy, and so in fact, it's probably easier to see it over in the side here. So I don't know. We'll probably need to live with it for a little while and see what we think about it. I didn't really intend to fix the other icons at the same time, but I found that once I'd started, it was hard to stop. And there's a lot of changes, things like the house, the trash, and all the story view icons, all slightly different. Changed the perma view and permalink ones where they used to have those kind of, these are just characters, or that's a character from a font, which I then added. the additional 2 lines too, and so that's why they've got those kind of sloped off ends, but updated them to have rounded ends to match everything else. So one frustration is that there is definitely an issue with some icons. You can see it here on this X, or you can on my screen, that the cancel icon, there's a 1 or 2 pixels have been trimmed off of the bottom of it, which is, I think, a technical issue to do with the production of the SVGs. And what's annoying about it is that it's very inconsistent. Sometimes it does that, and sometimes it doesn't. Any questions about stuff I've just shown so far? The new icons or the nested pop-ups?
Do you think you should change the import icon also?
The import icon. Yes, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It could be, it could mirror the export icon. So this is the current export icon.
Exactly.
That's the current import icon. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I really liked, when I first did the paperclip, I really liked it because it made it clear that what you're doing is, equivalent to an attachment, and it seemed like a nice existing sort of metaphor for what was going on. But yes, I do recognize that, well, I think I said in the commit actually, where I moved the export button to be below the import button, and really all that does is highlight the inconsistencies in those icons. So yeah, I don't know, what do other people think?
Actually, with a quick lookup, I found that there are a lot of there is a well-established standard for export icons, and maybe sticking closer to that could be helpful for people to get the hang of them.
Well, this is my I don't know what you mean, Yaka. If I search for export icon, what I get is these kinds of things. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what I've done is intended to be. I mean, look, it's very close to this. It doesn't curve the arrow to the side, but neither, as it happens, does iOS. Current version of iOS is like that.
Maybe I'm confused. What was your new icon for exports? Maybe I got it wrong.
The export icon is that one, which you may not be able to see. I can't select it or anything.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, I believe simply the fact to have it point to up and right or to the side may be more explicit for people, because the simple upward arrow could just as well mean bring something up into the wiki subjectively. So this could be, for some reason I couldn't explain because I'm not an ergonomist.
No, that's not what you're saying. Is well, so that's an example of one that's sloped.
Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Most of them are curved.
Yeah, but this is external link. So this means external link. And the others mean links too. So this is the icon for link.
These are all export icons. These are absolutely export icons, I believe, because they're what iOS, what the iPhone has used until recently for export. But I agree, they closely resemble. I mean, I think it probably is the curvature of the arrow that distinguishes the export icon from the external link icon.
I think the problem with the upper row is that from a lexicon standpoint, it triggers up in your mind, which goes with the upload. And
yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I was just going to show you here actually that these are some of the sketches from other versions, but you'll see that in fact they all have either horizontal or vertical arrows.
Yeah.
Good. Well, so thank you, Yaka. I think that's quite helpful. But overall, hopefully, you'll see why I wanted to do this. This, to me, when I step back and look at this sheet of icons, they just look very. It's sort of inconsistent. Some of them being really heavy, some of them being really light. I think we've got a lot more consistency now. Not that anybody ever sees the icons in that way, of course. Another change that I think came about this week, since the last Hangout, was suggested again by Matt, I think, actually, which was to combine a table of contents with a pane for viewing tiddlers. So I can move around in this table of contents. If I select a tiddler, that tiddler appears in the right-hand pane. This is something I really like and had done some experimentation with very early on, but Matt's inquiry was the perfect driver to make me do something about it. It also has the feature that if I click on a link, that link opens in this panel. A limitation is that I would then need to go and find, where is it? Go and find that tiddler, and I'm not even sure that I can. Maybe it's under. Yeah, here we go. So I've now found where that tiddler is in the table of contents. In an ideal world, that part of the table of contents would expand automatically so that one could see the highlight. But I quite like it. I think it's a nice. It obviously solves a similar problem to the zoom-in view, zoom-in story view, but by radically simplifying navigation, I think it gives end users a much simpler experience. And if you're, to the extent that you're publishing information to other people to access in kind of read-only mode, I think this presentation is pretty good. If you're not needing to jump around in between several open tiddlers, then this is quite nice and clean and logical. There's a variant as well where if I switch that to external nav, when I click on a link, now that link will open externally, but I'm not really quite sure which of those is more useful. So I do, in fact, plan to, thinking in the background of ways to handle that that issue with auto opening, so that when I do that, oh, sorry, I need to do that. So that when I do that, it should automatically open that video's heading. Any questions about that?
If you click on links, how do you know on which original heading you have clicked on the left side?
Then you don't, because I've now moved to a different tiddler. So what I'm saying, look, in this case, I'm on sharing your tiddlers with others, share a Dropbox link, and that is visible. So as I navigate, then, and what I'm saying is that some of the time, you at the moment can navigate without it opening the heading so that you can see the current tiddler. But one of the other issues is that it might require scrolling as well. So I'm up here, I click on a link. If that link is right down here in the table of contents, I probably don't want to scroll down to make it visible. So I think you get to some issues with, well, we could have an independent scroll bar on the left-hand side. I think that makes things a bit more complicated. We could, yeah, don't know, a few solutions probably. Oops, sorry. Any other questions about that? There's a message on the group again from Matt. It's a bit of a theme about improvements to control panel. I made one minor improvement, which is dropped that the obsolete tools tab here. But I did make a couple of changes that Matt suggested. Oh, actually, I think this one I'm about to show you, Tobias suggested, that now the tiddler counts here in the basic tab of control panel. If I click on one of them, then it automatically jumps to the advanced search with the appropriate filter to display that, that total. So if I do that, there's my list of overridden shadow tiddlers. So hopefully that makes things a little bit more explorable. And there was a question raised about the size of these arrows, so I've just done some tentative restyling of the plugin listing to try and make the icons a bit less prominent and that arrow a little bit more prominent. And I do intend to work my way through the other suggestions that that Matt posted to the group. Those are a few little sort of odds and ends to show you. The real focus of my work over the last week has been on finishing the exporters, and as I say now, this dependency on the ability to have nested pop-ups. Okay. Oh, I should have pressed done on Branimir on your question earlier. There's a question from Yaka on the group, which is in the Q&A tab, which is one of two that I jotted down for a more general discussion. So Yaka is saying about mobile usage of TiddlyWiki and especially in mobile app form, and there's a link which I will screen share and follow. Oh, okay, Yaka, this is add to home screen. That's a feature that, okay. So it looks, I had no idea that Android supported that. It looks like they've done it in a way that's compatible, to iOS Safari, which I am familiar with. Yeah. So I don't know. You raised a very general question, and this is actually a slightly specific aspect of it. So right now, there is no way for a user to add additional meta tags to the TiddlyWiki HTML file unless they modify the template that is used to generate the HTML file. And there should be. So one of the things that I'd thought of was making it so that all tiddlers tagged $tags/meta tag or something would be automatically inserted as meta tags in the head of the document. If we did that, I think that, actually I say meta tags, we'd need to do it for links as well. But if we did that, then as far as I can tell, that would also let us do everything that's required for add to home screen. Well, it looks like they use a manifest, so one would have to create that manifest separately as well. Probably when we can do all of that, we probably would add it to tiddlywiki.com as well.
I think one short question. I don't know, do you know someone who has a FireFox OS mobile phone or something like this? So I would be really interested to get some information if how TiddlyWiki works with FireFox OS.
I believe it's very simple now to try it out because I think that Firefox can run Firefox OS apps. The new Firefox.
So simulator.
Well, I think not a simulator actually. I think it is a yes. Actually, no, you're right. Technically, it's a simulator, so it's an implementation of the same APIs. But I think it's probably running the same code. So it might be better to say that Firefox runs Firefox OS applications like in a VM, really.
Yeah, I think so. But the problem is the CPU power. So I would be really interested in a real device. Because the PC has, I don't know, has 4 cores or 8 or I don't know. So.
Although you remind me of something I'm currently fascinated by, which is that I have yesterday's. I've got the iPad that came out last year. It's called the iPad Air. It came out at the end of 2013. Since that came out, the iPad market has not done particularly well by all accounts. Lots of the press that you read is about how their volumes have declined. And yet, this year, they launched a new iPad that's ridiculously, absurdly faster still. And I don't know why. I don't know why they're putting massive processor cores into an iPad when my understanding is that iPad, so the iPad today, the iPad Air 2, is like as powerful as the laptop I was using in 2011 or 12, which is really weird. Anyway, I mean, it's sorry, it's not disagreeing with your point, but I guess it does connect with the most general thing, which is that I'm used to thinking of mobile as being a very different environment than desktop. And certainly for most of TiddlyWiki Classic's life, that was absolutely true. But now, in the case of TiddlyWiki 5, there are almost no. It works great on mobile, I think. The things that it does at the moment work great on mobile. There are more things that it could do on mobile. But in order to get it working great on mobile, I didn't have to do anything mobile specific. It was just making the design responsive. So we've got to this interesting point where there's no special effort really to create a mobile compatible web application. We still have this kind of performance difference, but it seems as though the performance difference is going to go away, because I assume that Samsung and Google are also going to start throwing 64-bit processors into their tablets too. And one great thing, of course, in terms of performance on old mobile devices is that the ability to generate static HTML files means that we can always use TiddlyWiki to generate content that'll work on old Netscape 4 browser, that kind of thing. But I think we've discussed it briefly here before. I would really love to have the time to write a TiddlyWiki mobile application, smartphone app. So for me, the thing that would be most useful would be to write an iPhone, iPad application. And the reason why it's suddenly got so interesting for me to do that is because iOS has finally implemented features that I think have been in Android for a while to make it easy to extend other applications, so that, for instance, we could do a clipping function that let you select text in Safari and then select TiddlyWiki from a menu and have that page and the selected text be automatically transferred into TiddlyWiki. So yeah, there's I think a well-integrated TiddlyWiki, well integrated on a mobile device, so that you can, I don't know, export images to it from other applications, all that kind of thing. I think would be a very handy, useful thing.
Yeah, the reason I was bringing up this link, because it's obviously a bit narrow in purpose, because it's Chrome only, which makes it relatively wide also, because that's the default browser on most modern Android mobile devices. There is no longer an Android native browser on many devices that go out these days. They don't have a separate browser. You go with the Chrome by default. But it was a sort of a follow-up to what we were discussing with Eric earlier about making a mobile version of TiddlyWiki. It doesn't necessarily require to go through a third-party software development kit or exporter, as long as it can be encapsulated at the OS level into a launchable sort of web app. Because that's basically what it is. It's just a web app that's encapsulated for the OS. And it seemed to me that was more in sync with the general idea of TiddlyWiki of being as platform agnostic as possible and not having to release an iOS version of TiddlyWiki and an Android version of TiddlyWiki, and making, in as much as possible, and whether that's not too much constraints technically, being able to simply distribute the same TiddlyWiki and allow the user to add it to desktop without modification to the code or not having to maintain a different distribution.
So I mean, look, I'm absolutely in favor of add to home screen. I think it's a great capability. It works really well with TiddlyWiki, and it has right back to iOS 4 and whenever Google copied it. So my comment about add to home screen is that doing it is dependent upon the ability to add meta tags. I can't bake those meta tags into the core because then users wouldn't be able to, for instance, set the icon that was used on the home screen. But I think that we absolutely need both, because the trouble with the add to home screen experience is that it's a bare bones read-only experience. At least on iOS, there are actually horrendous restrictions in what a home screen application can do, and it absolutely can't do the kind of inter-application integration that I think is really vital. I want to be, when I'm using a smartphone, I'm jumping around between different apps. Whatever app I'm in, I want to be able to push stuff into TiddlyWiki. And ideally, I'd like to be able to do things like quick lookups of information in TiddlyWiki. So one of the things I was thinking about, for instance, is iOS now allows custom keyboards. A great thing for a TiddlyWiki app to do would be to provide a custom keyboard so that one of the keys on the keyboard would let you choose from keyboard shortcuts, strings of canned phrases that are stored in the TiddlyWiki document. And that would be really great. It's a way of getting stuff out of TiddlyWiki and into other applications. But obviously there's no way that the price for doing that kind of tightly integrated stuff is that we'd need to do an application. But as I say, I would love to have the time to write an iOS application. I don't have the time to write an iOS application, and with limited time, there's no question in my mind that the best platform for me to focus on is the web, and that does mean home screen, add to home screen, and so on. And I don't think it's very likely that I'd have time to write the iOS application.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that, because I don't choose iOS, and I wasn't aware of the limitations on the iOS platform. Whereas on the Android side of things, it actually behaves pretty much. It's a new session of the browser that's launched without the usual browser attachments.
But you can't save changes. So I mean, it's still read-only, isn't it?
No, you can't save changes, as far as I remember. The problem is mostly in ergonomics, in that you lack, because you're not in a browser, you lack some functions like searching in the page, and obviously everything that requires drag and drop goes out the window. Because you don't have that facility on mobiles in general. So it's mostly a matter of ergonomics that don't account for the mobile platform, where you don't have drag and drop and that sort of thing. But most of the functionality from the limited test I've done seem to be there.
Okay, so look, if you can save changes after adding a TiddlyWiki to home screen, I think that would be amazing, but I don't see how you can. I mean, when you add to home screen, at least on iOS, what you add to the home screen is an HTTP URL. And so, there's no way to save changes back to that HTTP URL. But maybe Android behaves differently.
I have to double check that. I'll get back to you on that, because I seem to remember I generally favor FireFox on mobile over Chrome, because it behaves much better with TiddlyWiki on many levels. But that limited functionality of being able to save, I think, was working, at least on the or maybe it was. Maybe I'm wrong, and it was on the Tiddly spot TiddlyWiki, which will be totally different in terms of being able to save, because you will stay in the same domain. And I will have to double check that, and I'll get back to you on that.
But yes, so we'd like to see more improvements to add to home screen. Would be good. But this, the other things you mentioned, you ran in there into a list of other issues on mobile. So you mentioned no drag and drop, but I don't think drag and drop is required on mobile either. So the things, drag and drop is a way of importing things in TiddlyWiki. And on at least on iOS, if I press the import button, it lets me browse for a photo because that's the only data type that it lets you browse for. But you know, it works. You can import stuff. You just can't drag and drop it.
I think I run into the problem trying to. I think that was trying to update the TiddlyWiki. Like the updater didn't, at the time at least, allow to select a file for upgrading the TiddlyWiki by any other means but dragging and dropping it from the browser.
Oh, no, you can, so, I mean, as it happens, this wouldn't work on iOS, but the upgrade wizard, so if I go to tiddlywiki.com/upgrade, I can drag a file onto that box, but I can also click it, and then I get a browse dialog that lets me just choose the file.
Yeah, I haven't tested that in a while, but either the function, the link to get a file selector wasn't there, or it was non-responsive in my test. But that was like a few versions ago, so maybe it works now. I would have to test that again.
Cool, cool. Okay, on-screen sharing. Yeah, so I mean, I guess what I'm saying about mobile is that as a nicely behaved JavaScript application, there's a bunch of facilities that mobile platforms give us. As far as I can tell, TiddlyWiki is taking advantage of all of those features that it can. So it uses a responsive design to adapt to a small screen size. It uses that browse widget in a way that works on mobile devices. But I think there's an opportunity, a terrific opportunity, to build custom smartphone apps for reading and writing TiddlyWiki on the move. And as I say, better than ever, opportunities to integrate with third-party applications. And yeah, wouldn't it be nice if I had more time? The other thing that makes it tempting to write an app is that Apple have launched this new language, Swift, which is not as horrible as Objective-C was. So it's the first time in my adult life that I felt writing an application for an Apple platform would be fun.
Tell me, Felix joined.
Yes, I'm so sorry, Felix. I let the conversation continue after you joined us. Apologies for being rude, but welcome. Very glad you could make it. And I hope you're not exhausted after your grilling last week. Felix is just saying. Oh, here you go. Hi, Felix.
Hello.
Hello. Would you like to
Hello.
introduce yourself? We do normally ask people to introduce themselves when they join after the Hangout started, just so everybody knows who you are.
Yes, so I'm Felix from Hamburg, Germany, and I'm currently developing a plugin for TiddlyWiki. And it's not done, but it's almost there.
Would you like to give us a preview of where you are with it?
Yes, I don't know if I don't have a camera here, but I think I can share my screen.
Yeah, you can share a screen without camera.
1 second, then I will just open it. I just have to recompile my demo, and then I can. Okay, I think it's done. Okay, so this one here. You can see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I've done is I've well, I've spent the last days writing a lot of docs for my code and for also for user help. I try to inform the user how to use the plugin and a little bit about the details, what's under the hood or the philosophy of the plugin. And there are 2 or 3 features I've added now. First, okay, wait, I will turn off the debug. First, it's now storing positions, and for every view. So if I change the view and there's a tiddler which is also in another view, then the positions don't interfere. They are stored separately. So if I create if I move this here and I will save it. So every time I move it at the moment, the tiddler which stores the position is changed. So I have to save it here. And let's say if I reload now the browser, you see it's reloaded with this position right here. And also every graph that okay, I'm in default mode. Let's go to this one here. Okay, at the moment it's collapsing because I'm trying to do something, but let's say I move this graph like this. Now I save it, and this graph here depends or has the view example 1, which I'm using at the moment, and it also reads from the same map. I called it map as Jeremy suggested it, and it looks the same. So if I update something here, or let's say I would do it like this, I will update it here, and now I switch to default and I switch to example 1. It looks exactly the same. I'm not propagating position changes instantly because this would lead to recursion, because if this changes here and this would also change like this, then this would update the position again, and then this one would update itself and all this. But I don't think it's a good idea maybe to update it, update the position while you are dragging, because maybe it's better to have a button which says store positions now, because at the moment it looks like this. When I drag it, it always recalculates and stores the positions in the map. And you still there?
Yeah. No.
It's weird talking to myself, but maybe it's a good idea to. What I had in mind was to make a drop down for actions, and I would say, for example, store positions, and here, and then it stores positions, or I say, I don't know, do something else. So a list of actions you can actually do, and I wanted to do a drop down for that.
Okay. But did you consider updating the other views of the same map when the drag has finished?
Yes, this was an idea, but this can only be realized. Well, I already did that, but I reverted my changes because it resulted in recursion. Because at the moment, all the updates are done instantly. So if I did that, then the changes would always start over and over again. But I think it's a good idea to, once you have stopped dragging or clicked store position, to update all the other graphs. Yes.
I think you can probably avoid that recursion if you want to drill in there. I mean, what I would expect you to be able to do is to defer during the drag. You'd be updating a copy of the map in JavaScript, and then at the end of the drag, update the tiddler that contains the map. And then you just need to make sure that the other widgets that are viewing the same map get refreshed, because obviously they'll be able to notice that the tiddler containing the map has changed.
Yes, the problem here at the moment, and I already talked with the people from the Viz framework or the Viz library, is I have a problem with, well, they sometimes call the stabilize event, which is used to stabilize the graph in a correct position, for at the very beginning. Because, or I don't know, the graph is moving at the very beginning, just a few pixels, but it results in a position change. And this, usually you wouldn't care because you only, the use case for Viz.js at the moment is only have one graph. I already talked with the guys and I told them, look, at the moment I have here all the, in all graphs I have now the navigation buttons, but this is a pre-release of the Viz.js, and in the beginning, 2 weeks ago, they didn't think of having multiple graphs in one browser view, and they they queried their graphs by a get element by ID, and I told them to use, or I asked them to use get elements by class name and refer to the parent, and then go down to the nodes they want. So now it works with multiple graphs. You can have. Yes, but the problem is, I think they designed it to be one graph in one window. So I'm struggling at the moment with some issues, and I try to file or to write an issue. Yes, but I agree with you. I want to do it like that, and I think I also. Oh yeah, I haven't shown you. There's another feature I just implemented. It's the edge filter is working now. So if we are now in example 1 and I say depends on, okay, first it moves everything into the viewport, and if I click requires, it only shows requires. If I click depends on, it shows depends on. If I click all, it's all. Okay, it's nice, but what I really want to do, and I try to do it tomorrow, is to have did you even see it, or was it too fast?
Yeah, no, we saw it.
Oh, you saw it, okay. I want to have a dialog show up. If I click on edge filter, I want to have a dialog, and all the possible edges with a checkbox right next to it. And then you can select, I want this edge, and this edge. Not every edge, but every edge type. I mean, it depends on or requires. And then it will get stored, because at the moment you can only decide to show all or one edge. But I think it would be better to give the user the option to select multiple types, and then, yes.
And this edge filter is stored with the view?
Yes, it is. I can show it to you. This is now
I believe you. If you say yes, I believe it.
Yes, but just for you to know, it's this one here is view example 1. So I will. Oh yeah, and I used the following scheme. When I store views, they are stored under this path, and the label is written in the title. So if the tiddler gets deleted, I can still extract some metadata maybe by using the title. I saw Jeremy using it for buttons and this technique, and also then he's using delete prefix or something like that to remove the path from the button. And the map is stored next to the label. And the map looks like this. It stores the positions. So example 1 is open at the moment. So if I do something like this and I open map 1, okay, I don't know, but it changes the positions here. And the view is stored, the default view. Where's the default view? I cannot find it at the moment, but a view has a field. Oh, okay, this is. Because it's a shadow tiddler. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, but it's stored somewhere in the view. And yes, that's it. And I did a lot of code documentation in the recent days. And I try to upload it tomorrow or on Wednesday.
Mhm. Felix, I've seen the GitHub repo. Do you import this library with all the documentation, or do you plan it to minify it?
Yes, I wanted to talk about it. Good that you say it. It's there's an issue I have with this library in its minified state. It causes an error with the abou function. I don't know, we are using in TiddlyWiki. If I use the non-minified version, everything works perfectly. If I use the minified version, nothing works. It says error with. And
how do you minify? Which minification library do you use?
Oh, I didn't minify. I just used the minified min.js they provide. Yeah, I can minify it myself. I use a task runner called gulp, and it can also
uglify.
Yes, I can uglify it, but I was a little bit stunned because usually it should work, and I wanted to. I don't have the error report at the moment, but yes.
Felix, I'm very happy to help you to try and help you sort out things like that. I think it's really important that the core makes it as easy as possible to bring in third-party libraries. So I don't know if you're you can always try putting a demo up on TiddlySpot and message me on GitHub. The easier you can make it for me to see what you're seeing, obviously the better. But as I say, very happy to help.
Yes, I try. I wanted to wait until I upload my stuff on GitHub.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to do so tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. And there's also another issue. Okay, it's not working at the moment, but I wrap my plugin around the button already in this, like when it's displayed here. Wait, I can show you the widget wiki text. One moment. Connect button. This button here. I wrap my whole widget around the button, and I have to do it because otherwise, when the dialog pops off or goes on screen, if I don't wrap my whole widget around the button, then the code is killed when the dialog pops off. But I don't like this because I don't want my widget to be activated just because the button exists on the top of every tiddler. But is there a way maybe to avoid that the pop-up is killed when the modal opens up?
There is. What you need is in the reveal widget. There's a parameter. There's an attribute called retain, and if you set that attribute to yes, then it just hides the contents of the reveal widget with CSS. So that the problem and the good thing is it doesn't render it. It doesn't render the content of the reveal widget until it is first shown. So I think in this situation it'll mean that when they've dropped down the menu in order to display the drop down, at that point the reveal widget will render its content, and then that content will stay rendered basically.
And then how is it unrendered?
It'll be unrendered if that the tiddler that you're looking at, so the one that contains the button, needs to be refreshed for any reason. So for instance, if I went and hid the button and showed it again, or flicked into edit mode and back out again,
okay.
those kinds of things, it would be destroyed.
Okay, so there's not the chance of a big memory leak because it stays open.
No, I mean the DOM, the way TiddlyWiki works, it would be very hard for a leak to happen by the DOM getting full, because the DOM sort of continuously reflects the underlying tiddler model. So you can't. There's nothing you can do that would keep adding elements to the DOM without there being interaction. So I could make a recursive reveal widget probably somehow that as I keep clicking would keep creating DOM nodes, but I'd have to keep clicking in order for it to do it.
No, okay, it's not an issue. I just thought it's.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, it's it's a very interesting technique. It's the right technique. So for to solve the problem of making sure that your widget is continuously available. I agree, it's not. We can probably do better here with that retain thing, but it's nonetheless an interesting thing. I mean, I think there are situations where people will have widgets that they do want to be instantiated for every displayed tiddler, and this is actually a very neat way of doing that. The alternative way that one might have thought of would be to add a view template segment, but that means duplicating a bunch of infrastructure that's kind of already there with buttons. By the way, I noticed that your additional toolbar button is not coloured correctly.
Which one?
The two connected circles. It's black instead of being.
Oh yeah. I think it is an issue with the SVG, but I'm not quite sure. I wanted to wait till somebody tells me this is the correct way to place an image in TiddlyWiki. So I just I don't know.
We'll come back to it. Yeah.
Yes, I was just lucky that there's a button, and everything else I wanted to postpone.
Fine. Great. Well, look, obviously when you do post it, I'll add the URL to tiddlywiki.com. And I'll see you announce it in the group, I'm sure, but I look forward to it.
Is it okay? I have a lot of debug messages at the moment inside because it's still there are still some problems sometimes with the code, and I quickly need to find, because I cannot debug it because it's when it's running I cannot see where the error occurred, because I have one big compiled file and it says when there's an error line 6000 something, and it's not properly referenced to my real.
You may want to try debugging in Chrome then, because in my experience, Chrome does debug correctly TiddlyWiki modules that have been evaled.
Oh, okay.
I think the question was if the console log can stay in.
Yes,
I think
for the moment.
As long as you mark it as alpha or beta, I think there is no problem.
Yes, that was my question.
What you will find is that lots of console.logs can have a significant impact on performance if you have, but obviously only for people who have the console open. So I think it's a problem.
Yes, especially with the graph operations. So when I do some manipulation of the graph, I usually turn it off. But to spot the error, I have written a lot of log messages. So it shows me how the filters are compiled and which nodes are updated. Oh yes, I forgot to say at the moment, last time the graphs were not properly updated when I deleted an edge or something, but now the events are well, I will just add an edge. Wait, am I in the right mode? Okay, forget about it. It's a setup problem at the moment. I was experimenting,
Okay.
but now I introduced a mechanism that that can propagate the changes. The problem is with edges, I don't use a single tiddler to represent an edge, so I cannot use the refresh mechanism because I'm not up when there's an edge updated or modified or removed, because I'm not notified because it doesn't correspond to a tiddler. So
no, I think what you'll have to do, and what I do in the list widget, is within the store within the widget instance a copy of what you last saw, so that you can detect changes.
Yes, I'm doing something similar. I check on my edge store, I call it, where all the edges are stored.
Right.
I check if there's a changes for every graph that has a certain view which corresponds to a store of edges. I check if there's a change, and then I go. I have a global property in which I register all the edge changes. I say it's similar to the refresh mechanism. I say an edge has been modified or deleted or something, and then every graph reads the changes and updates its pointer, and includes the nodes or deletes the edges and all that. So because I didn't want to spam the TiddlyWiki with temporary tiddlers or something, so I did it like this. It's also much faster because I stay in the JavaScript mode, and I don't have in the object mode, and I don't have to use TiddlyWiki as a layer. Yes, but when I upload my code, you will see I think it's a clean solution for that issue.
And you've got a URL to host the demo at, have you?
Not at the moment. Well, I have a URL, but it's not. I've seen many people use how is it called, TiddlySpot or something like that.
TiddlySpot would be fine.
Yes, I don't have an account there at the moment, but I will have a look.
Because it would be the best thing for me to link to, as well as the GitHub repo, is the actual demo wiki, so people can try it out.
Okay. Yes, then I will do it. And I separate when I upload my plugin. I will have two separate folders. One called distribution and the other source, because I didn't know how to organize my plugins. And in the source, I will put all the tools to compile the plugin, and in the distribution folder, I will put the plugin with the name prefix, Taskgraph, and all that, and so you can integrate it in TiddlyWiki easily, I think.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Felix. I mean, we spent some time on the plugin the last Hangout, which I think reflected, as I said then, how much interest it's raised, and I think you must be exhausted, but I think everybody's looking forward very much to the first release.
Yes, me too. I spent the last week working on it up until now.
Well, I mean, it's a really cool story, because from what I heard, you're not only interacting with us, but also interacting with the people on the Viz.js project, and that's really terrific. I think bringing these two projects together creates real value.
I hope this will happen eventually.
Felix, one question. Did they decide on their UUID problem?
Oh, I've looked at this issue yesterday, and I didn't see an update there.
Okay. So I will bump it.
Okay, or I will message them.
Yeah.
I hope when I'm done, I will also message them about the project.
About the usage, so that they know that TiddlyWiki uses it or can use it.
Yes, because I think it's a great showcase for them. And if they have a popular framework or a library, and if you can say, look here, and if they promote TiddlyWiki, it would be great. I mean, if they say, look here, this is where you can use it for mind mapping, and it uses TiddlyWiki, which is also great. Maybe this brings some support for TiddlyWiki. Community.
Yeah, I think so. And also they are very responsive on the GitHub issues. So because I also created an issue, and yeah, they are very nice. So
yeah, they are fast. They are Dutch, I think, from Holland.
Indeed. I'm sure that the Viz.js guys would be thrilled too. I'm just looking to see, do they? Oh yeah, they've got a gallery. I see. Okay, that's a gallery of downloads.
I think the big advantage from TiddlyWiki with the combination with this let's say mind mapping software now is that you can open your nodes as tiddlers and add a lot of additional information. And I think this is something that they don't know or they don't have. So that they don't have this direct interaction with something that can create content and visualize it. So I think this will be also some really good information for them.
Yes.
Cool. Well, I'm afraid that I need to buzz off rather imminently, so we need to close the Hangout today. I'm planning to have the Hangout as usual next week, and I'm going to try to schedule a weekend Hangout, but in fact that's just proving to be difficult at my end. But if we do that, we will not stop the Tuesday Hangouts, and we'll make sure to announce it in plenty of time. Thank you very much to everybody. I, again, very much appreciate everybody making the time to be here. A very useful session. Obviously, one of the most important things we covered was Eric's appeal, and I hope that you will all be able to support that and to help pass the word around, your words on the group and elsewhere to encourage everybody to support Eric will make a great difference. But guys, for the moment, thank you very much indeed, and I shall look forward to seeing you again next week. So we'll wave goodbye, and I'll click the stop broadcast button. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye. Cheers.
Bye.